All right, get ready, because today we're going deep, like way back in time and across the Atlantic.
Oh, this is going to be good.
We're diving into a mystery that's, well, let's just say it's got me stumped. The case of the missing copper from the Great Lakes region.
Ah, yeah, the missing copper.
Yeah, have you heard about this?
Oh, I have. It's wild, the scale of it all. We're talking like 500,000 tons of copper.
500,000.
At least. And it's gone, vanished, like poof.
And this was all mined, what, like thousands of years ago?
Yep, starting as early as 5000 BCE by indigenous communities during a time we call the Old Copper Complex.
5,000 BCE, that's a long time ago.
It is, and you'd think with that much copper we'd find more artifacts, right?
Right.
But in North America, they're surprisingly scarce. So the question is, where did it all go?
Right, where did it go? It's not like you just misplaced that much copper. I mean, it's not like your car keys.
Exactly. And that's where things get interesting. There's this theory, and it's a bit out there, but some researchers suggest that maybe, just maybe, the Minoans had something to do with it.
You know, the Minoans, like
Oh.
those ancient Greek, the ones with the labyrinth and the...
The Minotaur, yeah, them. They were a maritime civilization, super advanced for their time, flourished between 3000 and 1100 BCE. And get this, they were masters of bronze.
Bronze, so they needed copper.
Lots of it. And that's what makes this theory so intriguing. They're in the Mediterranean, right?
Right.
But their usual sources for copper, well, they might not have been enough. So maybe, just maybe, they had to look further afield.
Across the Atlantic,
To give
the
the
Great
sun.
Lakes.
Exactly. It's a bold claim, but let's back up a bit first. We need to understand what we're dealing with here. First up, the Old Copper Complex. This wasn't just some small-time operation. It was a huge undertaking centered around Isle Royale and the Keweenaw Peninsula.
And they were using some pretty ingenious methods for the time, right?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine using stone hammers to break apart rocks, then heating the rock with fire to weaken it. That's called fire setting, by the way.
Wow.
And then they'd shape the copper using cold hammering techniques. It's mind-blowing how skilled they were. They made tools, weapons, decorative items, all sorts of things. It shows a deep understanding of copper, both its practical uses and its cultural significance.
It's incredible, the level of skill they had.
Yeah.
But it brings us back to the mystery, right? If they were so good at working with copper, where are all the artifacts?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, or maybe the 500,000-ton question in this case. And that's where the Minoans come in. This hypothesis, it's definitely controversial, but it's captivating nonetheless.
Right, so let's set sail for the Mediterranean, meet these Minoans. They weren't just casual boaters, right? I mean, they were explorers, traders, builders of palaces.
Oh yeah, they were a force to be reckoned with. And remember, this was the Bronze Age. Bronze was the cutting-edge tech.
Like our smartphones today.
Exactly, and to make bronze, you need copper and tin. Now, they had access to some copper within their known trade routes, but it's possible that they needed more, a lot more.
And they were known for their, their seafaring skills.
Exceptional seafaring skills, and shipbuilding too. They were already navigating the Mediterranean, establishing trade routes, connecting different cultures across vast distances. So, is it really that far-fetched to think they might have pushed the boundaries even further? Into uncharted waters?
So we have the motive.
Mm-hmm.
They needed copper.
Mm-hmm.
And the means. They were incredible seafarers. But is there any evidence to connect them to the Great Lakes?
Well, there are some tantalizing clues, like these oxide-shaped copper ingots. They've been found in both the Mediterranean and North America. Could that be a connection?
It's definitely interesting.
It is. And then there's the Newberry tablet. It was found in Michigan, and some believe it has inscriptions similar to Minoan linear script. But I should say, the authenticity of the tablet and how to interpret those markings, it's still hotly debated.
So we've got a potential motive, possible evidence, and a civilization known for its seafaring prowess. It's a pretty compelling theory. But before we get too carried away, I think it's important to look at the other side of the coin.
You're absolutely right. Every good mystery needs a healthy dose of skepticism. Let's be honest, there are some pretty big challenges to this Minoan in America idea.
Like what?
Well, for one, the lack of hard evidence. We haven't found anything definitively linking the Minoans to the Great Lakes.
You mean like no Minoan pottery shards?
Exactly. No pottery, no tools, no structures, nothing that screams, Minoans were here.
Not even a stray sandal.
Not even a sandal. And on the flip side, no old copper complex artifacts have been found in the Mediterranean either.
So no two-way street.
Right. If there was this huge transatlantic trade network, you'd think we'd find something going in both directions.
Makes sense. So no smoking gun there. What about the logistics of it all? I mean, A transatlantic voyage back then? That had to be incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine sailing in those days. Small ships, relying on wind power. Navigation was rudimentary at best. A trip across the Atlantic would have been a massive undertaking. Risky, too. Lots of chances for shipwrecks or simply getting lost.
So maybe there's a simpler explanation for the missing copper. One that doesn't involve epic sea voyages.
Possibly. We have to consider the power of nature. Erosion, glaciers, these things can drastically alter the landscape over time. Copper deposits could have been moved, buried. Who knows?
It's true. Nature can be a pretty powerful force.
And let's not forget about the indigenous communities themselves. They likely recycled and repurposed their copper, melted down old tools, made new ones.
So some of that missing copper might just be incorporated into later artifacts.
Exactly, we just haven't found them yet. Okay, so what about those oxide ingots? And the Newberry tablet? Are those just leading us astray?
They did seem pretty convincing.
They did, but there are other explanations. Similar shapes and designs can appear in different cultures independently. It's called convergent evolution. As for the Newberry tablet, well, its authenticity is still up for debate. And even if it is genuine, the interpretation of those markings is far from clear.
So it's like we have a lot of intriguing clues, but not enough to solve the puzzle.
Yeah, and it's important to remember the Minoan in America theory, while exciting, it might overshadow the accomplishments of the indigenous people who are mining and working with copper long before any hypothetical contact with the Minoans.
That's a good point. Their skills and ingenuity shouldn't be downplayed.
Absolutely. Their techniques were sophisticated, and their culture, it was deeply connected to the significance of copper. It's really a remarkable story of human innovation.
So if we put aside the Minoan theory for a moment, what other explanations are there for the missing copper? Remember that article we read? The Case of the Missing Copper.
Oh, yeah. That one had some interesting ideas. It suggested that we might be underestimating the scale and complexity of trade networks within North America itself. Maybe the copper traveled vast distances through intricate trade routes, leaving behind very subtle traces we haven't found yet.
Like an ancient highway, but for copper.
Yeah, something like that. And the article also reminded us about those powerful natural forces we talked about. Glaciers, erosion, those can really reshape landscapes, potentially burying or scattering copper deposits over millennia.
So it sounds like the missing copper might be a combination of things. Natural processes, indigenous recycling, and maybe even vast trade networks within North America.
Right. It's probably a mix of all these elements, natural history, human history, all woven together. And that's what makes this mystery so captivating. It forces us to consider different possibilities, to acknowledge the limits of what we know, and to appreciate just how complex the past really is.
So maybe the Minoans weren't hanging out in Michigan, but it does make you think, right? About ancient civilizations, making connections across huge distances.
It really does. I mean, even if the specific theory about the Minoans isn't true, it opens up all these possibilities. Like, what if ancient cultures were way more interconnected than we thought? What if there were these incredible journeys, trade routes, exchanges of ideas, spanning continents? It's mind-blowing.
It is. I'm already thinking about, like, ancient explorers setting sail into the unknown. Do you have any examples of these early connections?
Oh, tons. Think about the Silk Road. People usually associate that with the Middle Ages, but there were actually earlier routes linking East Asia with the Middle East and Europe. And it wasn't just goods, it was ideas, technology, culture, all flowing back and forth across continents.
Wow. It's hard to even imagine what those early travelers went through.
Right, and their impact on history, it's huge. Oh, and here's another one, the Austronesian expansion. Starting around 3000 BCE, these amazing seafarers from Southeast Asia, they set out on this incredible journey of exploration and colonization. They were masters of navigation, using the stars and ocean currents to guide them. They ended up reaching places as far apart as Madagascar and Easter Island.
No way. Madagascar to Easter Island. That's unbelievable.
It is. And even closer to home, for the Minoans, we find signs of long-distance connections. During the Bronze Age, artifacts like amber from the Baltic region and lapis lazuli, that beautiful blue stone all the way from Afghanistan, they started showing up in the Mediterranean.
So even if those oxide ingots don't prove a direct link between the Great Lakes and the Minoans, they still tell a story about ancient trade, about things moving across vast distances.
Exactly. They're a symbol of something bigger. And it reminds us that new discoveries are constantly changing our view of the past. We're always learning, always pushing back the boundaries of what we thought we knew.
So where does that leave us with the missing copper? We've got this mystery, this unproven, but a very cool theory about the Minoans, and this growing realization that maybe, just maybe, ancient civilizations were far more connected than we ever imagined. It's a lot to think about.
It is. It's a reminder that history is full of unsolved puzzles, and that our understanding of the past is always evolving. Sometimes the most important thing isn't finding all the answers, but just asking the questions, letting those questions guide us, spark our curiosity.
I love that. So for everyone listening, here's something to ponder. If the Minoans didn't mine that copper, what else could have happened to it? Maybe there's an even more amazing story out there, waiting to be discovered. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and who knows what you might find.